Good evening, everyone. Tonight is the Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, May 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via GoToMeeting. At this point, we'll ask Dennis to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dennis. And just a real quick, before we go on to number 2, we're going to need a motion to amend the agenda. We had got the additional transfer of funds request earlier, or yesterday from Carl, so we want to add that to item number 6. So we look for a motion to add to item number 6, the additional transfer of funds request form.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. All right, now we'll move on. Are there any visitors on the call that would like to be recognized?
I would, thank you.
Paul?
I would as well.
Okay.
Paul Gebauer, 43 Longgate Road.
Okay.
I would just like to say a couple words regarding the John Olson issue. I just think it's a real petty partisan politics, and it just comes across as very, very lame. He didn't get this kind of scrutiny when he filled a couple of vacancies for one for fair rent and the other for EDC. I think it's just obvious to me that someone on the council wanted their pound of flesh, and the rest of the council circled the wagons.
Good one.
To make life difficult for John.
Yeah.
And I think hey, this is my opinion, okay? And I think it has all to do with the letter in the Harbor News. I don't think there's any question about that. So it was personal, and I know a lot of you guys don't like him, and John speaks his mind, but that's the way he is. And, as they say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So I stand with John. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little new to this particular medium. I'm Lauren Santos. I was, I've served on various boards and commissions in town in the past, including the Finance Committee and the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I've served with John Olson, and he is a very smart man. He does his homework, and he would be an asset to this particular board, which is not at all political. I feel that things that were said were really off the mark. And I was actually quite horrified by them. The Democratic Town Committee nominated John, and it is pretty unusual to have the nominee of the DTC rejected by the board. And I think that it is, in fact, a political issue. And I really think it's a very bad precedent. I know that John would do his homework and would do an excellent job on the commission. So that's what I have to say. My husband is here as well, Dr. Martin Cherniak.
Thank you.
And he is a longstanding member of Clinton and has been following things in town. And we're very happy that the budget passed. I'm sure you are too.
So I don't usually get addressed within my family as doctor, but I'll take that for what it means. I don't know a lot about the working of the town council, but I do know John Olson. Long before the town council, I've known him for probably 30 plus years. some of you most of you probably are not that familiar with organized labor. John is the longest serving president of the AFL-CIO when he was in Connecticut in the United States. And I just want to say that to have that kind of job, whether you like labor or don't like labor, a labor leader of this type has no real power. The power that he has is honesty, an absence of corruption, and personal integrity, and certainly a forceful personality, which he has. Now, John can certainly, John may have difficulty speaking softly, but I do want to say one other thing, because I've talked with him and I know the things that really concern him. Some of the things that, John has made the comment only half in joking, that there's more corruption in a small town in Connecticut than there is in the entire labor movement. It's not entirely a joke. And some of the things that I know John feels very strongly about, and it's not the fault of anyone on this council or in the town, but is the way in which there are many town employees who get benefits and have split jobs, which is a threat to kind of expertise and, to some extent, good government, even if it is friendly. I think the other thing that I know he feels strongly about is that, and this is not unique to Clinton, any of these issues, that in small towns there often is a very large influence by real estate and development interests, which is there, people have their interest in town government, that's inevitable. But it also has an effect on the nature of the town and how it grows and how it develops. So I can't comment about the council. I read the article in the Harbor News. All I can do is be a character witness and say that John is a person of careful analysis and integrity. And I know he can be bluff, but I wouldn't have known him all these years if that was all that it was. So I thank you for having the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other visitors? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to number 3, which is the approval of the minutes for the May 5th, 2021 meeting. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. All right, we'll move on to number 4, which is the appointments and reappointments. Eddie Alvarado, burning official, reappointment for a term till January 31, 2023. We had received some information that Eddie had forwarded along. Carl had received it as well earlier today. That due to COVID, the expiration date on his appointment will be until January 31st, 2022. So we do not need to make any movement on this tonight. So basically, we can table this, or I just need a motion to table it, and we can address it down the road when his term is up.
So move to table.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Now move on to John Olson, Board of Assessment Appeals, alternate seat for a term until November 2023. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make that motion. And Mr.
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
before you ask for a second, I would
Mhm.
like to make some comments on behalf of John, if I may.
After the second.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Second,
Christine Goupil, I'll make the second.
discussion?
Okay, can I make my comments now?
You can, Tim.
Okay, well, it's already been mentioned that John was the longest serving president of the Connecticut AFL-CIO. He was also a former president and business manager of United Association of Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, and Steam Fitters, Local 133. He was labor's representative on numerous state boards and commissions. He spent more than 49 years of political activism and volunteerism. He was chairman of the state DTC on the Central Committee, co-chair of the Platform Committee, served on political campaigns locally and nationally. He is development coordinator for the Elderly Housing Development and Operations Corporation, building housing for low-income seniors. He recently was appointed to the Governor's Advisory Board for CRC. This is a man, as you can imagine, that has strong feelings about certain issues. And yes, sometimes his frustrations show. But I don't believe in any instant did he actually promote any ill will to anyone. And since he has never been denied before, I don't believe that with a man of this background should be denied now. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so everybody on the council also knows we've received, and everybody on the council has received letters from Ona. Nigel, who obviously appeared and was on the Board of Finance with John. We also received a letter from Chris Shapiro, also addressing some interaction that he's had with Mr. Olson at some meetings. So those two obviously are also letters that every council member did receive and then had the opportunity to review. I mean, I you know, again, I think at this point, you know, I mean, people have approached me as well. So, you know, I really didn't want to get it into this situation of, you know, good and bad, making it political, going down this path of where we're headed.
I have something to say.
No, not now.
Okay, when you're ready.
No, this is now, we're no longer visitors, so there's no more comments to be made by the public at this time. This is all council comments at this point. So again, any other comments from council members before we take a vote?
I'd like to say something. I'm Paul Gbauer. I'm very upset that you would think that I would use a situation like this to vent my spleen or whatever. If you've followed my 12 years on this board, you know that I vote with the best interests of the town of Clinton at heart every single time. Many times I have voted for Democrats that have convinced me that they are appropriate and a good fit for a board many, many times. This is absolutely nothing to do with your perception of of a letter that John Olson wrote that attacked me personally. Plus, and I always stand behind the fact, there is nothing in the charter, the current charter or any previous charter, that prohibits a member of the town council or the board of selectmen from having a job in the town. And because I've been on this board for 12 years, I recall having 2 police officers on the board of selectmen in the past. Now, you may not know that because your history doesn't go back as far as mine, but we have had several employees on this board in the history of the board, and it has never been an issue. So that is not, and I correct this situation. There's nothing.
Right.
Can everybody else go? Yeah, 1 second. If you're not speaking, can you please go on mute?
Lori, can you mute? So also, I wanted to remind you, this is, and the people that are speaking as if this is a partisan move, that this is Republicans versus Democrats in this appointment, clearly are not remembering the fact that in recent history, the Republicans put up Gary Bousquet, Omar Francis, Doug Traynor, and the late lamented Vin Semino for appointments that the Democrats refused to appoint. So I'm not saying that that was wrong, that that was right or anything else, but that's the way the system works, is you judge each person by their merits and vote them accordingly. It has nothing to do with party. We're operating in the best interest of the town. This is an elected position. We have a great responsibility putting someone on this board, and we want to make sure it's the right person. I hope that every member of the town council read the letters from Ona Nadel and Chris Shapiro of their personal interactions with Mr. Olson when they came before public. Ona was on the Board of Finance when John Olson was the chairman. Please, I don't want to go into it, but there was a reason why John Olson stood up, walked out of the meeting and resigned his chairmanship like that one night. It was going from bad to worse, and that is what I am hinging my opinion on. So anyway, I'm not the kind of person that goes to the newspaper when I'm being found that my desires are not being met, similar to what just happened this week. The Democrats didn't get what they wanted, so they immediately open a can of worms. This has nothing to do with me having been written about. It's happened 100 times in the past. I really couldn't care less. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. Republicans versus Democrats. It has to do with putting the right responsible person on a position of great responsibility. Thank you.
I
No,
was
no,
on the board
You cannot speak
ever.
Anymore, correct? You, as a visitor, you spoke, and then that's it. We are not, this is the town council discussions at this point forward. Anyone else?
Christine Goupil. I'd like to speak in favor of John Olson. For those of you who are not aware, he has been sat on both sides of the labor issue. Recently, he has helped the town negotiate 5 union contracts and did it with the best interest of the town. So he sat on the other side of the table, the management side of the table, for the interest of the town. And also, I just want to point out that if we're going to mention letters that were submitted, Allison Roberts, who also happens to sit on the Board of Assessment Appeals, did submit a letter in favor of John Olson's appointment as well. I'm going to go into the specific credentials. I think Tim Guerra covered it exceedingly well to point out that he is more than qualified to help support this position, specifically just because of his expertise and knowing what is required to be on the Board of Assessment Appeals. And that ultimately is the factor that plays into appointments, whether or not the folks are qualified to board or commission. I also wanted to just point out in terms of letters submitted, some of them, I'm not going to say typically, tend to be one-sided. And I was very aware of what transpired at one of those meetings. And so, I think sometimes we have to take these things with a grain of salt and refer back to what the qualifications are for a person before we evaluate whether or not it's really considered hearsay or subjective in terms of how behavior is analyzed or assessed. Certainly, we know folks on this town council and on other boards and commissions have potentially behaved in a fashion which may not be in the same view as everybody, to be perceived as, I suppose, just a display of your passion for the issue. And we could argue that point probably ad nauseum. So again, I want to point out John Olson is also being endorsed by somebody who is a sitting member of the Board of Assessment Appeals, and he is more than qualified to fill the position at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I suggest we just take a vote. This is exactly why I had to start a third party. No offense to the existing 2 parties, but this is exactly why people out there are tired of going back and forth. And I don't know if this is a political move or not. And I'm not even going to speak to that. I am going to vote in favor of John Olson. But the things that go back and forth about this party and that party, and someone did this and someone did that, the people in Clinton are absolutely exhausted of it. So I say, let's move on. Let's vote. Let's take it for what it is, and let's be done with this. The town wants us to talk about policy.
Can I make one point, Chris?
Yeah.
And that is that this whole thing could have been alleviated if Mr. Olson had come to a meeting. That was all we asked, was the town council made a motion to ask John Olson to attend a meeting and speak with us. Where is he? We've had 2 meetings and he has declined to attend. That concerns me. That's disregard for the desires of the council.
Anyone else?
Christine Gupil again, just on another matter related to this is a point of order. In the past, we have not directly addressed the visitors, and because there's no ability for the visitors to have a rebuttal, I'd like that policy to be discussed at another town council meeting, what we are going to be doing in terms of engagement with visitors. Are we going to allow dialogue to take place and or further conversation later on in the meeting without the ability of that visitor to have the opportunity to rebut? So again, if we can take that up at another time, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Well, again, the issue that then creates is the issue that Eric just spoke about, is that we'll spend the next hour going back and forth discussing this, and again, it is absolutely 1000% correct. This is all it's ever been, is a back and forth, and it does get tiring after hearing it all the time. He was asked to appear at a meeting. He declined to come to the meeting. He's not even here tonight at this meeting, and now people want to make this thing political. So, I guess we'll never be able to stop that, and we just hope people will, obviously, maybe change some stuff going forward. So at this point, we will take a vote. All in favor of the appointment of John Olson to the BAA alternate seat for a term until November 2023?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Okay, motion fails. We'll now move on to number 5, which is the modification of land use application fee ordinance. We all have received the information from John Gazowski that was sent to Carl. I guess, Carl, can you just speak a little bit about this as it relates to these increases?
Sure. So what you have is a work product that's evolved with the Planning and Zoning Commission to update the regulations. I think, as you know, because this board has had to act a couple of times, their fees in certain areas were resulting in permit fees that were in excess of the actual cost to process the permit, which is in violation of where case law has settled on a number of occasions. So they have tried to adjust their fees downward where it makes sense. And then in other cases, they had fees that didn't line up with both the cost to produce the permit as well as where the market seems to be. John did do a review of a number of other municipalities in our basic neighborhood to determine whether our fees were in or out of line with our neighbors and whether it was truly capturing the cost of production. So what you have is recommended edits to the ordinance to move forward with the adoption process. So I just wanted to put more in front of you to get your flavor, and then we would have to start the process to amend the ordinance.
Thank you. At this point, having hopefully everybody reviewed the ordinance fee increases, look for a motion to approve the modification of land use application fee ordinance. Eric? Second? Okay. Any other further discussion? No, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much. We will now move on to item number 6, which is the line item transfer requests. We have 2 on the table, one for project graduation and one for the consulting fees for the FEMA. So we'll just have Carl brief us on these and then we can move forward.
Sure. So the first one up is a transfer request for the town council supporting project graduation. You did this previously. It does not exist in the budget. It didn't exist in the budget the last time you did it. So last time it was by way of transfer. Past, it was cut out of the budget with the thought that the Youth and Family Services grants would cover the cost of the program. So while you're getting more grant dollars, in fact, from the state under that program, the use of the funds is a little tighter. So you cannot use that grant in order to pay for what project graduation does. So this would be following what you did last in December 2019.
Okay. So at this point, do we have a motion to approve the transfer request?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion?
I do have a question on the second transfer.
Okay, we're on the first one now.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
Any other questions on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. And now on to the second one.
A second transfer request is the fee for engaging our third-party consultant that assists with FEMA reimbursement, the FEMA reimbursement process. So in this particular case, it's a scope of work for Tropical Storm Isaias, so that we can move forward with securing reimbursement for that storm. This is 75% reimbursable from FEMA. We're proposing to have the full cost borne now because we know the full cost and we're not sure whether or not between now and the end of the fiscal year that we'll actually receive our reimbursement from FEMA.
Okay, any questions?
I apologize. My connection just cut out. You might have just mentioned it regarding the consultant. Is it the same consultant that we were utilizing before, or is this a new consultant?
Same consultant the town has had for a number of years, and we continue to use.
Any other questions? Okay. Motion to approve transfer funds request. Tim? Carol, second. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Move on to item number 7, which is the Finance Director's Report. We have Sue
Hi,
here.
everybody. Yes, I am. Hi, thank you. You've received the April report. I'll just do a quick overview. For the month of April, the revenues were $3 million, most of which $2.6 million of that was the remaining education cost share grant, or ECS. The remaining $400,000 was a combination of additional tax revenues of $200,000 and $200,000 of other town revenues. The town also received a grant of $62,000, which was transferred from the Board of Ed for E-rate grant that was received by them earlier in fiscal year 21. E-rate is a federal grant program to help the schools upgrade their communication infrastructure. This had to relate to projects that were filed in prior years, but they got the money this year, so they remitted the funds to us. Revenues overall for fiscal year 21 are tracking higher than budget, with the total revenues and other town services each approximately $500,000 higher as of April than the fiscal year 21 budget. The only other state grant revenue that we're still waiting for to receive is $192,000 for the grants for municipal aid projects, and that will typically be received in June. The expenses are tracking within budget. 10 months of the year, which April's the 10th month of the year, you can look at the reports and see that the expenses are now 83% of the full year budget in general. There are encumbrances included in those numbers though too. In addition to the anticipated overruns that we talked about for the fiscal year 21 salary and related line items due to the contract settlements during the year, there are a few other budget line items that will require year-end transfers. The areas that currently will require line item transfers are indicated with an unfavorable balance in the budget versus current year-to-date column on the department detail sheets included in your packets. I'll hope to have these requests to you at the next meeting. I'm just waiting on some numbers to finalize a little bit more and some remaining invoices and charges to be posted before I present those to you. Contingency is now at $235,000, reflecting the $15,000 transfer for additional expenses related to Morgan Bridge repairs, which was approved last month. And as I previously mentioned, we're anticipating about $40,000 to $50,000. Also, the contingency will be used to cover the salary line item transfers that we've been talking about. The fund balance report has been updated to reflect the passing and finalization of the fiscal year 22 budget, with the transfer of the $2.6 million of the unrestricted funds to restricted funds to cover the capital projects that were approved and the donation from the surplus as well. So the pro forma unrestricted fund balance is now calculated at 15.1%. This fund balance calculation will be updated again once the fiscal year 21 is closed and the audit is completed. Other than that, that's the end of my report if you have any questions.
So I do quickly. So is that the last portion of the ECS state grant money?
Yes, it is. We've received 100% of what we budgeted for them. Yes, that was the last payment.
And then just quickly tell me about this E-rate federal grant. You said 62,000. I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not as familiar with it as the Board of Ed side because they're the ones that did the filing for it. But when they did construction work on the Joel and Elliott schools, Frank Rossi was able to apply for this grant, and it has to do with helping the schools upgrade their communication structure, better communications, internet services, and things like that. So they submit the funds. You never know when they're going to be remitted, and the school did receive the 2 payments totaling this earlier this fiscal year, and then they need to remit the funds to us. So
Thank
it's a
you, Sue.
reimbursement grant for them. Yeah. You're welcome. Anything else?
Anyone else?
It's Christine Goupil. Sue, that was a perfect summary of the grant.
I got it right. Okay.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
All right, move on to number 9, council discussion on future projects. Does anybody have anything they would like to discuss?
May I?
Yes.
Well, seeing as how I do work in the land use office, of which I am not ashamed or embarrassed, there are so many big projects coming up right now. Big, major projects that have a lot of technicalities to them that we haven't had to deal with much in the past or for a very long time. And I'm just wondering, a couple of years ago, I brought up the idea of charging a review for the fire marshal's service. I mean, charging for the fire marshal's review services. And if ever there was an appropriate time for that, it would be now, because with this commercial work coming up and with these apartment structures that are coming up, those are very technical and require a great deal of scrutiny. And I would like to bring up the topic or consider the topic of a fee structure for fire marshal inspections. I know a lot of other towns have them. Some are a flat rate, some are a per unit fee or whatever, but I'd like to know if there's any interest in instituting something like that in Clinton.
Dennis here. I'm all in favor of it, Carol. In talking with other people in town, they said it's a wonder that we hadn't done it before. So I agree with you 100% that we should move forward with creating some type of fee structure.
Carl, where would we go from here if we wanted to do something like that?
You'd have to have an ordinance providing for the fee structure. So some feedback would be needed for how you want to deal with it. Some towns do the flat rate based on only a certain type of permit review, where that's meant to be all encompassing of everything that's done. Other communities are more granular and they're charging fees for everything the fire marshal does. So I think you just need an ordinance and then you have to decide what is the right balance for Clinton that's reflective of Jeff's time to provide his review of plans and other inspections that are required.
So once again, would a committee be necessary to create an ordinance or work on an ordinance together?
I don't think a committee, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward vanilla ordinance, so I can draft up something if that's what the council wants. I had asked previously that the fire chief do a little bit of a poll to see what other towns are charging. I do have some information already from some communities, but I thought he would be in a better position to know more of what's going on in the general area for what people are charging. And then at least we'll have an understanding of what the market is around us. So with those two pieces of information, the council can go down the process of creating an ordinance.
I think we had somewhat of a conversation surrounding this during the budget, and there was a conversation about there's allocated that role, ultimately is applied to the work being done and or the number of applications, so that we could start gauging the review that's being taken. Are we on obviously we know we're on an upward trend, but I think it would be helpful for the council to understand what the job entails. So as we go conversation of ordinance to create a fee structure, we have that information calculated. That would be helpful as well.
You were cutting in and out of there, so I think you wanted to know, just to give a snapshot of what he does for the council.
Time-wise, what is it like, and or the number of applications out there reviewing? I assume this is time, but I think it'd be helpful for understand a little bit more.
You're cutting in and out. Christine, why don't you can you send an email? Because you keep cutting in and out. So, I mean, maybe you can send an email to council in call, kind of just addressing what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, I can do that. I don't know if you can hear me better. I shut off the camera. Sometimes that helps.
Oh, okay.
Better?
Yep. Yes.
So, I was just saying during the budget session, we had some conversations surrounding having an analysis of how much load he has, because I suspect over the past year it's been substantial, and or looking at the number of tests to review, and maybe it's not as per the type of application that he's putting in, so that we can start understanding.
Cutting out again.
I've got enough to know what she's looking for, so.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any comments on
Where
this?
she's coming from.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I guess my final 2 cents is we are going to move forward with this, creating this ordinance. We're all in agreement that we should proceed with that and let Carl draft up some type of a draft of an ordinance, because I sure am in favor of it.
Yep. We'll have them work on it, and then you can bring it to us at the subsequent meeting.
Great.
Anything else? Nope. All right. Then we move on to the chairman's report. I'd like to read a statement to the council about kind of how everything sort of played out in relation to tonight's meeting. So it's just going to be a statement regarding the recent BAA appointment. At our initial meeting for the BAA alternate seat appointment, the council unanimously approved a motion to table the vote until the applicant appeared at a meeting to answer questions council members may have. The applicant declined the invitation, instead asking for a vote to be taken. This appointment was left off the next meeting agenda as the applicant declined the invitation to appear as the council had requested. Subsequently, we heard from the DTC chairman, who had also requested we move forward with a vote. Agreeing to move forward with a vote when the council unanimously approved the motion to table the vote until we heard from the applicant sets a bad precedent with the council. And when decisions are made by this council, we should be standing by that decision. Okay, when this was not a party line vote. This was a unanimous vote by all council members. We should not be swayed by opinions of our own political parties when making decisions. The council made the decision, we stand by that decision. We represent the people of our town, and our decision should have the best interest of the town at the forefront, period. Our town is moving in a great direction. We have a relatively new form of government with a professional manager that has us headed in the right direction. Multiple new developments with more to come that will increase our tax base in the coming years. But we recently passed the budget with approval numbers that we have not seen in years. This council, as a group, should be proud of the work they are doing, moving this town forward. We all have a choice to be part of this success, remembering who we represent. remembering who we represent will keep us headed in the right direction. We overwhelmingly voted for a new form of government to alleviate the politics that we have dealt with in the past. It is about time we make this happen. That is it for me. We will now go to Carl for the town manager's report.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to expand upon in the written report that you got in the agenda packet. So just before this meeting was the last statewide municipal call with municipal CEOs regarding COVID. So I guess enough progress has been made that we don't have to have regular meetings with the governor and commissioners at this point. The governor does have his emergency powers extended by the General Assembly beyond tomorrow, which carries out until July. An executive order is supposed to come out this evening, which would respond to allowing for an extension of the electronic meeting format, or this kind of format, through until the end of June. The thought process is that a bill will be approved by the General Assembly, which will respond to either remote meetings or hybrid meetings. So there would not be the need for an executive order to continue this structure. So I think the council has to make a decision, and then we'll have to work with the other boards and commissions to get people ready to move into having normal meetings, or what we had is pre-COVID meetings, the in-person live. There is nothing that prevents us from doing that earlier. I believe the Board of Ed started this week with an in-person meeting, and that's going to be the model that they're all going to go forward with from this point on. They're all vaccinated, and they're comfortable meeting live and in person. So we will have the authority to continue this type of remote meeting through the end of June. But if you want to have in-person meetings sooner than that, I would need some feedback from the council. The Department of Public Health also issued mask wearing and social distance guidance since we have moved away from mandates and sector rules for businesses. There is still encouragement of masking when events, be it indoor or outdoor, are going to include children younger than 12. So if you're unvaccinated, you should be masked. And the advice we're getting out of DPH is to continue encouraging masking in events where you've got the likelihood of attracting children younger than 12, since there is no vaccine protocol for that age population. For indoor spaces, there is also guidance suggesting that we should provide for continuous social distancing, so that as it relates to town hall, that would be most relevant to the auditorium, to make sure that people can be 6 feet apart if an event is slated to take place in the auditorium. Other items that were included in my report, we're going again for the fish ladder grant. This is to help migrating fish work their way up from Long Island Sound inland to spawn at the pond that's behind what was the old Morgan. The grant is not for construction purposes, it's for planning to get the project ready to go out for another round of grant making for construction. We checked most of the boxes when we had an exit conference with the grant maker. The issue was that we were not, inland spawning grounds were not a priority in that particular grant round. The expectation is that we'll be more successful this go round. Hammonasset is going to be open without restrictions. It looks like all state parks will be open without restrictions. So thankfully that will take some pressure off of people utilizing the Clinton Beach, and we can go back to what was a normal beach season pre-COVID. I also provided for you a list of roads under the paving program that will go forward this spring, and the funding partnership that involves receiving funds from Connecticut Water Company for road restoration, where they've been doing line work. So they're leveraging our bid pricing for paving in order to reduce their costs, and we get assurance of a better delivered road surface than their contractor. We would be using Tilcon, who was the successful bidder for the fall. So we'll be issuing a press release and advising those neighbors of the streets that are to be paved later this spring. And that's, the only other item I've got is we've made it past the final hurdle with the STEEP grant. I received an electronic copy of a signed grant agreement out of DECD this week. So we are now to go with that project. I advised the EDC that we have all of the appropriate ducks in a row, and we're good to go. We'll start doing the downtown facade improvement project and rolling that program out to businesses, and finalizing what we had discussed and already telegraphed to the business. So we're finally good to go on that one. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Christine, I just had two questions. One is letter grant. NRCS be adamant that to secure this grant, they were the ones to make that recommendation. I wanted to know if the grant writer and if the grant writer and or if their fees are applied to this grant and so that they can be applied.
I didn't get any of that. The grant writer, if you're referring to the fish ladder, the grant writer, he was something that could be recouped if we're successful in securing the grant. And it's the National Fish and Wildlife. It's not NRCS, it's National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. They have a specific Long Island Sound grant.
Just for clarification, so NRCS were the first organization recommendation fish ladder when they're reviewing the repairs to the Morgan behind the Morgan School for the Indian River. They were fairly confident that we would be able to get it. Surprised that
we were expecting funding. We were encouraged by Deep and Steve Gephardt, who leads the fisheries division. Everyone was encouraging us, thinking we were going to be able to secure the grant funding. We had a competitive grant, but we did not fit within their funding priority for larger projects. This is not the first time that I've done a Fish and Wildlife grant. Tried to do one before in Darien. The state of Connecticut wants to make sure that Connecticut projects are competitive in applying to make sure that the money doesn't all go to New York or Long Island specifically. So it is a very competitive process, and it is what it is on each round. Our exit conference went well. We got feedback for what we think we need to do to beef up our application. So again, we're hopeful that we'll be successful this time.
And so I just two other questions or two other related as to grant right is, and then also now that you do have a delegation state level that can write in letters of support for such applications and or make phone calls to try to drive for grant applications as well.
Understood.
Anyone else?
I don't know if you heard my question. I was curious as to who the writer was.
You want a name?
Yes.
Hang on a second. Her name is Sally Harold, and she was recommended to us by Steve Gephardt, who formerly was a Deep.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Thank you. One other question regarding the paving program. We did the analysis of the road inside. Will the paving also make repairs sidewalks that are damaged, not just from Connecticut Water, but the general evaluation that was of the sidewalk? Well,
If you look at the report, Maple Avenue and Leffingwell Road are flagged for sidewalk work, which is part of repairs being done in that general area associated with work that came out of the Connecticut Water Company.
thank you.
Could you say that again, Carl? What is happening on Leffingwell Road?
The question was sidewalks, and if you
Right.
look at the report,
Well, I see the
Maple Avenue
sidewalks.
and Leffingwell Road both say sidewalks next to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in addition to road work, there is sidewalk work also to be done.
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether that was also or in lieu of, but okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
How do council members feel about our meetings? I know these are great meetings that we do virtually, so let's give some direction to Carl and then the council as a whole on how we want to proceed with this.
My 2 cents, let's get to the actual downtown as soon as possible. Based on all this communication of half hearing some of the comments from council members, Carl and the garble, sooner the better. That's my opinion.
I second the in-person meetings too.
How about you?
Yeah. So that
Personally,
means,
I'd like to keep the morning meetings like this and the evening meetings in person. I'm not a morning person.
Carl, would it be something that we could slate for June to start for an in-person?
June is your next meeting, so if you want, that would be a morning meeting, Carol. Then that could be the first in-person meeting you offer.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
This is Christine.
I volunteer to call Carol at 7 o'clock.
You're gonna have to call a few times.
That's Christine.
Just in terms of the engagement from the public, this has been, I think, a very good process for them to be able to call in from home and engage with us. For those who are either not vaccinated, that are immune compromised for whatever reason, disability, etc. So I would hope that we would still allow that ability for people to engage in the format moving forward.
The hybrid was discussed, I think Carl can speak to it.
That would be a hybrid meeting, so that involves a certain amount of technology and a little bit more planning. So if you want to look at hybrid meetings, I'll have to get back. I don't have an immediate answer on that one. I'll have to consult with IT for our ability to pull one of those off. And since this goes out over cable access, we need to engage them for their ability to support us doing hybrid meetings.
Okay, interesting.
So I guess at this point then we'll target June for an in-person. Everybody's comfortable with that? All right, we will work towards that and then Carl can follow up with everybody, I guess, on the hybrid, if that's possible. It's going to be difficult to do that though, so. Anything else?
Just on the hybrid meeting concept, the Board of Ed is not doing any hybrid. It's full on in person, and that's the only choice. So just so you know what the other big board in town is doing.
Yep. Thank you. All right, on to number 11, Town Council Committee Liaison Reports. Anyone out there? Eric? Tim?
Yeah. Inland Wetlands met on May the 4th. There will be a public hearing on the Carter Hill Road Bridge on June the 1st. There is, according to Kathy King, there's an uptick in WEO permits. Planning and Zoning met on May the 10th. The applicant at the 153 East Main Street will not fight SHPO. with the existing Dowd house. They will keep the house and incorporate it into the overall development. Exciting new site application for 14 East Main Street for a veterinarian hospital. Boarding, grooming, daycare. The proposed hours would be 8 to 8 Monday through Friday with a shortened Saturday hours. They're awaiting the fire marshal and CRAD, and these notes may be dated, so if they are, you can correct me, Carl. Public hearing for that on June the 14th. 34 West Main Street, 23 residential units. There's some parking concerns. They table that until the plan is revised. And then the planning report, ongoing discussions with DOT, discussions with Rivercog on regional affordable housing plan. And they discussed outdoor dining, beekeeping, and regulation changes at their last meeting as well. So there's my overall, albeit brief overview.
Thanks, Eric. Tim?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Tim?
Put your
Okay.
mic, Tim.
Better. Thank you. Yesterday, the Goodwin Mobile Lab was at the Elliott School. Goodwin is a school that caters to manufacturing. As you know, the Economic Development Commission has a Clinton Manufacturing Coalition that they've established. And through that coalition and the school, this Goodwin Mobile Lab came yesterday, and all 8th graders were put through the mobile lab to get an education about manufacturing opportunities within the state of Connecticut, including within our own town. So I think that was great news. I talked to Marco yesterday. We happened to run into each other, and there's actually 3, I guess, graduates from Morgan who are currently employed by Bosch, and that there were 8 total students who have evidently applied. So 3 has started working, and evidently 5 more have applied for work at Bosch. So this program is really taking a great direction here in town, and eventually, it could lead for our students to get jobs in other locations. Maybe the Lee Company. Certainly, you have all of the opportunities in Groton with the expansion that they're going through. So this is a great opportunity for Clinton, and certainly something that we need to promote, I believe, because it's great for our community to have parents consider moving to Clinton for what the school system provides its students here. Also, there was a discussion, and Carl, please correct me if I'm wrong, that there has been some architectural proposals that supposedly have been submitted in regards to the facade work in downtown. And
A price proposal was submitted.
a price proposal, okay. So nothing actual, but a price proposal, okay? So that at least has been done and thought has been given towards the work that might be suggested from the architectural services that have been employed by EDC. And finally, Kerry Allen and Nikki Adakis made a presentation regarding pedestrian walkways and bikeways. This, I think, coincides with what Christine mentioned. Their concern is that the town needs to upgrade sidewalks and consider bikeway opportunities. And so I think this is probably something else that eventually, probably sooner rather than later, will come before the town council in discussion stages. So That's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I attended the police commission meeting last Monday. Everything is going along. There actually was hardly any change from last month's report. All the programs are moving on. The only thing I would ask is the public check in at the town website, read the minutes of the police commission, because there are about several new stop signs going up in and around town. I guess people should familiarize themselves with them. I guess at Glenwood and Liberty, they're going to revise that little intersection, and there'll be stop sign change there. There's up there at Brickyard and Prairie Dell, and there's about 4 or 5, and I don't want to just rattle them on because it'll be just confusing. But I would, when people can get a chance to peruse the police commission minutes, they actually outlined all the various intersections that are getting additional stop signs. And also, just a little sidebar of that, one of the things of consideration for the traffic control division of the police department of concern right now is the request by the people at Osprey Commons to shut off the waterside lane entrance and exit. And there have been some proposals made. They've checked with the fire department and the police department, but I guess during what I've heard from the meeting, I could be corrected if Carl has heard anything about it, but there's a little bit more too than just closing on that road. I guess it has to get council approval and also the zoning board. So it isn't the fact that they thought they could just put up a couple of barriers and they were going to shut down that waterside lane. It doesn't quite work that way. And the fire department, of course, is concerned because they want to make sure emergency apparatus. So that's about one of the biggest things I get from the department is getting involved. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thanks,
Dennis,
Dennis.
I can just add to that, the council should be aware that is actually part of their site plan approval, the access to that, as well as the fact that, it is a safe, their site as well. So there's public access, waterside lane, as well as safety personnel access through waterside lane. So that's a much larger conversation related to that. Not a
Correct. That's correct. I mean, that's the concern right now from the chief and the police department, is that it isn't just a open and shut case that the police could just go down and help them put barriers up and blah, 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 blah. That it actually has to go through quite a few of the town committees to get this type of thing changed. And you're correct about that original proposal.
Anyone else? Anyone? No? We all good? All right, move on to number 12, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, thank you all, have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good night, all.